Today I am so excited to be talking to Karin Tanabe, and she is an author, and her newest book, which just came out in July, is called The Diplomat's Daughter, and she has the copy right there. Yay! Oh, look at that beautiful cover. Oh, God.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
So perfect for the story. I love when covers look exactly like what the story is, you know?
Yeah, we as authors have so little say over the cover. Well, I mean, I'm sure like John Grisham has a lot of say, but I have little say. So I'm always I was so pleased when this is what they sent me. And I made very little changes to it. And yeah, I really like it. I think it's very...
And I'm a cover person. So when people say, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm like, oh no, it matters. I think it matters.
Yeah.
I love to collect them, but lately I've been doing a lot of audiobook and Kindle. Just
nice
time. It's just more. I love holding a hardback, and I'll buy the hardback because I collect them. But for what was funny is I try to read them. I wanted to tell you this story because I try to read them every day. I have tried to read ahead, and it doesn't work. Because it's not right. I start getting characters mixed up, and I'm getting old. And I just find it's not really good for me to do that. So I always read the book right before I interview, right? So you and I were last night, we're okay, let's do this, tomorrow. And all last night, I don't know if this, well, you're a mom too, but you lay in bed and I'm like, I have to read this book tomorrow. Okay, no, wait, how long is it? Did I check out how many pages?
It's a pretty long book, too.
So this is what my day looked like, right? I had it on Whisper Sync. So I had it on Kindle, and then I had it on audio. So when I sat down, I read it, because I can read faster than they can talk, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And then as I'm making breakfast this morning, and making lunch, and doing laundry, I had it on audio. So, I lived your book today. And I did it. I got finished at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Wow.
Time to spare.
I'm impressed.
Time to spare. So, but I'm so happy that I did it like that, because I lived it today, okay? And I've been reading a lot of historical fiction lately, and people are accusing me, because as people can see if they go on my YouTube channel, right now I've got a row of historical fiction, and then somebody said to me, is that all you do? I'm like, no, it really isn't, but I've kind of gotten into it, and I keep it is, and it's fun, and I keep getting more people, and I'm like, oh, I want to read that book, I want to read that book. But I have to say, this book took me to all different places. Not that I don't love those books over in Europe, okay, because I've learned a lot. But your book took me to completely different places, and I learned so much. It was so much fun, because even movie-wise, you don't get as many movies from World War II about the Pacific. You don't get as many books, and I'm not sure why. Because now that I'm knowing more, I'm like, it's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear what was going on over there as what's going on, at the same time. And so just to tell everybody how this sets up, you have a girl, the main character, Japanese. Yeah. And then this is a threesome. And then the guy, Christian's German. And then the other guy, Leo, is Jewish. You covered it all.
Yeah, I did cover most of the World War II diaspora. And when I was coming up with the idea for it, there's so many World War II books, and that's the really intimidating thing. Is you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna write a World War II book, and so many thousands exist. How am I gonna make mine different?
Right.
So that is something I really set out to do, to write a book that I thought didn't exist, that would still appeal to people who like World War II stories, but that would tell something pretty different to what they were used to.
Absolutely, because I did not know. Okay, I knew a little bit about the Japanese being interned in the country, because there was a president that which president was it? Clinton?
Reagan. Reparations. Okay. Yeah.
I remembered that. I remembered that he had given the Japanese that had, that they had kept in I didn't even know where it was, until your book. And, I remember that he gave them money, or kind of paid them back for anybody who suffered because of that. But I had no idea they did that to the Germans also.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know that either. That was actually sort of how my book came about. Is my husband is German American, and we were talking about internment when George Takei, if people know who the actor and activist George Takei is,
Yes.
he had a musical on Broadway about Japanese internment, and my husband was like, "Oh, did they intern Germans?" And I was like, I have no idea. So I looked it up and discovered that, they did, not in as large numbers, but, I think 120,000 Japanese were interned, about, I think 20,000 German Americans were interned, so a lot, and they just haven't had their stories told. Like you said, they didn't get reparations from Reagan or any other president, so yeah, it was sort of this unknown thing that I wanted to tell.
Yeah, and I've read so many love stories coming out of, the European side, just, in different combinations, but I never read like a three, like three, like what happened to three people and a love triangle kind of situation. And so I really loved how you did that because, okay, as I'm reading it, and I do not give away spoilers, so we don't even have to go there. Okay, we're not even going there. But as I'm reading it, I found myself like, I couldn't, how you get to like halfway in a book and you're like, I know who I want. If you're reading anything about, a love triangle, you absolutely can decide. I could not decide. And I couldn't tell where you were going. I couldn't, because they were both such amazing men with different personalities, but they were both amazing. So I was like, I don't know who I want for. I can't tell, so, but it was awesome because I didn't find out till the very end, and I'm not telling anybody because they got to read to the very end. And I was the last like 50 pages I was reading on the Kindle, and I'm flipping, I'm like reading as fast as I can to find out what happens.
Oh, so, good. Yeah. I kept changing my mind too.
Did you?
I did. I couldn't decide who she was going to be with. I mean, once I really started writing, I knew. But when I was plotting it, like, I couldn't decide. And then, like, it's war, so you have to kill some characters, or it's just not believable. And I was like, who should I kill off? And I'd kill someone off, then I would bring them back, then I'd kill someone else and bring them back. And, like, it was kind of like playing God or puppeteer these characters. But, yeah, it was, I really liked being able to have three characters because you could write more stories, really. I could write three different stories set all over the world: Austria, Japan, the U.S. Christian enlists in the army, so he goes all over the place in the South Pacific, Hawaii. So that was really fun.
And so does she. I mean,
yes.
I thought it was really cool how she goes all over the place too.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, as I'm listening to it, I was like, wait a second, where is she? Like, because I'm listening and reading, but as I was listening, I'm like, wait a second, what country is she?
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially because they also travel on boats, so they go like all over. These boats were not exactly the boats of today. They were incredibly slow. I think Europe or America to Tokyo took like 90 days or something crazy.
Yeah.
When they went to Brazil and India and like all over the place on these boats. So yeah, it was like taking a global journey writing this book.
You're like, okay, where's this character? And then where's this character?
Yeah. But then it's also intimidating as a writer because you're like, oh boy, like I better learn everything about everything. And I mean, you can't learn everything about World War II, but in my little spaces, I tried to become like at least a bit of a armchair expert.
Yeah, because I did not realize that Shanghai was such a haven for Jews. I had no idea. Really, I've never heard that before. So that was the most interesting part to me, was that the Jews that could escape could actually, because think about, okay, they're over here, China's over here.
Yeah,
like, I mean, that's just crazy.
It's crazy, but it's like, they would obviously, they knew what was coming to Europe if it hadn't, already sort of exploded in their countries, and they were doing anything to get out. And China, it was under Japanese occupation, Shanghai was, and it was one of the only open ports to Jews in the whole world. So it's crazy to think they just kissed their lives goodbye, got on a boat, and just went to Shanghai.
Yeah, and I thought that the point that you made several times in the book was that the Chinese weren't really anti-Semitic. They didn't really care, and the Japanese, I guess they didn't
neither.
Care.
I mean, they didn't. To them, to most of the Asian population, Jews were just another form of white person. I mean, it was just like a foreigner was a foreigner, and Christianity and Judaism really meant nothing in Asia. So Hitler obviously tried to get the Japanese, who they were allied with, to, implement the final solution and to persecute Jews, and the Japanese wouldn't do it. And that was probably one of the best decisions they made during the war. I mean, they made a lot of terrible decisions, but that was the right one, definitely.
Right. So I guess this may sound stupid, but it's because I know so little about it.
I mean, I was the same boat when I started.
Yeah, I'm like, so when the Japanese were, they were putting like their own kind of concentration camps in China. Was that what I was getting from that?
So they didn't have like a concentration camp for Jews. They
had the Chinese.
Yeah, they treated the Chinese pretty badly.
Okay.
Nothing like the concentration camps in Europe, but
right.
Yeah, they definitely did not treat the Chinese well, which is something I cover in the book. But for the Jews, they did nothing. I mean, they let them come there, which was more than like the U.S. was doing.
Right.
And then finally, when Germany put like a lot of pressure on them, they did build sort of a ghetto in Shanghai, but it was it wasn't like walled in or anything. Okay. They just had the Jews all move to the same area. It was called the restricted area, and they had more rules and stuff. I mean, it wasn't like life wasn't wonderful, but they were safe. I mean, they were safe from persecutions. So
right. Well, it was fascinating. I mean, I just found the whole story just so fascinating because I learned so much about it, and I love her. I mean, she's amazing, and what she has to go through, even. Like just even what Japan was going through at that time, And here's a little fun fact. So I am a homeschooling mom, okay? And a couple of years ago, I said to my sons, the last two of my sons, I said, we have to do a language. And I said, you get to pick on Rosetta Stone. We're going to do a language. They're like, we want to do Japanese. I'm like,
wow.
Oh, okay. I'm like, does Rosetta Stone have a Japanese? Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah, that's a really hard language.
It was, and we did 3 years of it. Now, I can't speak it because they don't really have you speaking it. They do kind of a little bit of pronunciations and stuff that you have to say it into your mic, but it's not really good. They can't really tell. But, we had a lot of fun with it, actually.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Probably it's like a very different part of your brain, and that's great.
Yeah, they didn't want to do the normal, I don't know. I don't know if it'll help them in the future, but I was like, you know what? Who cares? We'll just do it. You want to learn it. And, it's amazing how many words are... like you could figure it out by the Japanese word.
That's awesome. Good for them. Good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I really wanted to make her this strong, independent woman who is basically not in agreement with what her country is doing, but because she's been all over the world, she's seen so much. She's lived in the U.S., she's lived in Austria and Germany, she lived in London. And all of a sudden, she kind of has to fall in line in Japan, and she really is trying to find her place in the world. And I think that's what all three characters have in common is that, they're all being persecuted for who they are. Their countries are saying, you're not what we want you to be, and we're gonna, in some cases, lock you up behind barbed wire. And they're kind of just trying to find their place in the world, trying to find where they fit in and where they can be accepted. And it was an incredibly tough time.
Well, I love the idea that, first of all, they're all young, during this time. And we take
20.
media so for granted, but, can you imagine back in that day when after the war, it's like nobody knew where anybody was in other parts of the world, and you're just kind of word of mouth, you're trying to find out, but what each one of them experienced, I feel like only the young could experience, like only the young could survive through, especially Christian. Well, no, Leo did too. Like, it's amazing what they could get through. And she did too. I mean, she had her hard times too. And it was like, it's amazing that they could go through those hard times when I'd be like, no.
I give up. I know, that was one of the reasons I really wanted to pick young people, because it's amazing how resilient they are. Like, these horrible things can be happening to them, but yet these basic human emotions are still such a big part of their lives. Like, they can, be locked behind barbed wire in an internment camp, but then they still have a crush on someone. And you're like, wow, like you could actually still have a crush on like a girl. Like it's amazing. And to have like first kisses and all these things that we kind of take for granted. But when you're in like a war zone or a time of war, it's so different. And then I think the young also have an amazing optimism that I wanted to have through the book.
Like hope.
Yeah, hope. And I think that's one thing they all share is even though all three of them deal with a lot of disaster, they don't lose their hope in life, in the world, and in like finding each other either.
Yeah. So, okay, this is, when I was looking through what you've done in the last, and now I find out you have 2 children. Like, I don't know how you've done this. In like 4 years, you've written 4 books.
You have 6 children.
I didn't write books.
Still. Oh my God, having children is much harder than writing books.
I baked a lot of cookies, okay? I did not write books. And I couldn't believe, like, okay, so your very first book was The List, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was 2013.
Yes.
And then The Price of Inheritance is 2014.
Yep.
Then you took a little bit of a break. Like
yeah, because my next one was historical fiction, my first historical fiction book, so it just took me longer.
Okay, and that was The Gilded Years, which you've gotten amazing reviews for. You know, I saw all over. And this book came out in July, and this is 2017. So these 2 were close too. And I'm just like, how do you find the time to do all this writing? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so The List, my first book I wrote while I still was a full-time reporter at Politico. I had a full-time job, and I wrote the book. So that was what I thought was going to be the most demanding. But then I have to say writing with kids is much harder than writing with a full-time job. So I feel like I've started writing in anytime I can. Like I used to be more precious with my writing habits. Like, oh, I need to be inspired, or I like to write in the morning. Now it's like, well, you have no choice. Like you like to write whenever you have time. Right. So now I just write like whenever I have time, and it's chaos, and I end up deleting a lot more than I used to because I end up writing a lot of junk. But I do love it, and I think you just have to find the time. I mean, I will say, writing The Diplomat's Daughter, I was in a state of like hallucinatory exhaustion, and I forgot a lot of things. Like I remember one of my first readers was like, "Do you want to address the death of Hitler?" I was like, "The death of Hitler? That's important. I should put that in." So. A lot more drafts, a lot more fact checking now, but I feel like moms are incredible. Somehow you just get it all done, and you still like find time to brush your hair at the end of the day and put your pants on and keep going.
Yeah, with my first 3 children, I lived in DC too.
Oh, no way!
I did. I worked for a law firm downtown, and so that was busy. Because I was a working mom at that point. After the 4th one, I gave up working. I was like, no.
Yeah, then the math doesn't work anymore.
The math doesn't work. I just couldn't think anymore. Yeah. But, and then I started homeschooling them. So I did do that. But I just feel like, the time that you have to commit to is just very difficult to like put your brain, because you feel like your brain sometimes at the end of the day to say, I mean, I knew this one woman author, she did have 4 children, and she's like, I wrote between 12 and 4 at night. I was like, oh my God. And she's like, yeah, my husband watching, would get them ready for school and stuff, and then I'd sleep. I'm like, I couldn't think. There's no way.
I couldn't think either. I would write gobbledygook. I mean... Yeah, being tired is one thing, but like, I think actually Danielle Steele said the same thing.
Oh yeah, she had 9 children.
She has tons of children, and she writes in the middle of the night too, and we all know she does pretty well, so.
I had my days of Danielle Steele, so yeah.
I mean, when there's a will, I guess, you can always make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you thinking about next?
Yeah,
do you have another one? Like, do you have another one in the works, or are you still writing?
I have another one in my brain that I'm researching right now. I haven't started writing it yet, but I think I'm going to do something in French colonized Vietnam, Indochine, in the 1930s. I want to avoid Vietnam during the war because I'm a little wore out after.
Worn out? Yeah, definitely. I know when you said that, I was thinking that's what you were going to say.
No war. Vietnam without war.
Right.
But sort of during French colonization and the glamour of French colonization, also the dark side of French colonization. But I'm sort of interested in writing a bit more of a thriller this time, so we'll see if I can pull it off.
Well, what I love about historical fiction, which is why I get accused of reading so much, is that you just learn so much.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that too.
I do too, but then, I'll read a novel. It's not, and sometimes I'll read a novel after some heavy books, and then I'm like, oh, this is good, or a thriller or something, and it kind of puts your brain in a different place, but, I love it for, I'm a homeschooling mom. I've used historical fiction all the time to read history instead of textbooks. And this book, definitely, for all my homeschooling moms out there, some people say, oh, but then it's got this love story. So what? So it's got a story. That's why the kids are going to read it. Okay?
Right. That's why it's like faster and more fun than a history book.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
I think historical fiction gives a lot of voice to women's stories that maybe aren't in textbooks as much. Like, I think that's one thing that I really like about historical fiction. Because, like, you read a lot of history textbooks, it's a lot of guys.
And it's a lot of dates and a lot of, where with historical fiction, it kind of makes the story make sense. Like, the way you did the timeline, like, I actually understood what was going on. But like I said, I wasn't that familiar with that side of the world. So it made it make a little bit of sense,
Yeah, oh, good. Yeah, I definitely had this, like, master timeline written out because I switched between characters. But I still wanted to make it, go from the late 30s to the 40s through the war without doing too many flashbacks. And I think that is one of the hardest thing about having 3 stories and 3 main characters is you still want the book to gel and feel like one story and not like you're hopping around so much. So
right. Did you have to do a lot of heavy duty outlining with that? I always think when people have more, when they're jumping characters, like, you have to have pretty solid outlines so you don't lose your place,
I think the timeline for me, like, who was going to share what story in their lives when, was something I really tried to have set in stone before I started writing. And there were some things I knew I wanted to show, like the German invasion of Austria was really important for Leo's character, so I knew in the late 30s I wanted to be in Vienna. And then I knew, like, the American internment camps, so I, like, had to be in the U.S. for a certain amount of time. Right. So it was definitely like a jumble of dates and countries and craziness, which
but it really helps, doesn't it, to have a solid timeline and outline? Like, when you sit down to write, doesn't that really help the process along?
And I will say, when I was a newbie fiction writer, not that I'm, like, an expert by any means now, but my very first book, the biggest mistakes I made were time. My editor was like, how long has it been? A day? 3 days? 3 months? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. I'm just writing. So, the time, like, stamping and everything so your readers can follow along with it is something that did not come naturally to me. Right. It was something I had to work on.
Well, the one thing I want to tell everybody is they have to go on your website. Because I go on a lot of websites, but your website is cool. Okay?
Okay.
I love the color. I don't know, what they're doing now with websites is absolutely crazy to me. But when I went on it today, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. Did you?
I have old, like, clips from when I was a reporter. Yes. I used to, like, interview celebrities for my old job, so there's some of me talking to, like, Sting. It's totally not relevant to my books, but, they're fun.
That's absolutely fun.
Yeah, and just old, like, articles that I've written, and lots of ways to get in touch with me, because I love being in touch with readers, so,
I love definitely. Just how it has that opening, when you click on it, and it, like, opens. I was like, wow, this is really cool. I love that.
Good, thanks.
Well, it was so much fun talking to you today, Karin. I cannot wait. I know, I can't wait to read your next book. So, whenever that happens. I found you on Facebook just because everybody always says, like, how did you find me? I belong to these really great groups that these women just recommend books all the time.
Oh,
and yours
cool.
just kept coming up and kept coming, you know, like, you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to read this.
Nice.
So, because I don't do the Amazon reviews real well. I don't know. I just don't. I kind of stay away from that. But when you get book clubs and people like recommending it, I mean,
that is the best. I mean, word of mouth is really important, and just I think people who are passionate about reading are like in these sort of, you know, groups and stuff on Facebook, and those are the people who know. They know.
Exactly. They know. They absolutely. You know, for anybody out there who loves to read, I mean, go on Facebook to get reading. I mean, I find so many authors, and not just authors, but people who just read. This one woman, I think I read a lot. She reads like 3 books a day, and she's a reviewer for Goodreads. And I'm always messaging her. I'm like, I have a book to read tomorrow. How do you do it? How do you, like, I gotta do it. You know, and she'll give me tips on how she does it. But those readers are out there, and they're important because they're giving on their web pages. They're giving lists. And so, you know, it's nice for you guys to know, like, there's a lot of buzz going on about this book. And, you know.
Good. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think the way you did it with syncing Kindle and audio, and I just listened to the audiobook, actually. I got to, like, pick the people reading it.
Did you? You picked out the characters?
They send you like a few people, like they're like, choose between these 5 people, and you listen to like their past work. So I got to, but you know, I threw like 15 accents at these people because they're all over the world, and they did a great job. I was impressed.
Did a great job. I love when a good audiobook. Definitely. I was talking to this one woman. I was telling her how good her audio, and she's like, I can't listen to it. I can't listen to my words. I'm like, well, you need to write that woman a letter and just thank her, okay? You know, because it's true. Like, and they're getting better. Did you notice? Like, it's kind of an art form now.
I agree. They're much better. A lot of the people they hire are like Hollywood actors, and they're wonderful. And oh my gosh, this is like a 400+ page book to have to read that all out loud.
Well, you know, before when they first came out, they would just get somebody to just read it. But now they're like, you can hear in their voice, they're acting it out, they got emotion, and you get so involved in the story. So it's really important, I think. You know, a lot of people are listening to them now because it's, you know, get in the car, put on your audiobook.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much, Karin. I'm so happy to meet you, and I can't wait to share everything. All your links will be listed. They can find your website and all your social media. So I'm so happy for this book, and I'm really happy that everybody's loving it so much.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for giving authors a platform, and take care.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.